Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Average Joe's MMA podcast. You're here with your hosts, of course. You got Sesko. How's it going today, Sesko?
Going great, Tyler. How are you?
I'm doing well, and we're just recapping the UFC fight night between Overeem and Sakai. This is actually a really good card. Um, we had reviewed it this past week. Surprisingly, a lot of the fights did fall through because of COVID, but the event was still pretty great, regardless of missing a few fights.
I completely agree. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I mean, like with showstoppers like Michelle Pereira on there, how could you not enjoy it?
Yeah, so we're just going to start from the bottom of what we would consider like the most exciting fights on the card. So Brian Kelleher, his opponent got switched the day before. It actually got switched 2 times leading up to the fight, one only a day out of the fight, which is pretty crazy. So it's Brian Kelleher versus Ray Rodriguez. I think they mentioned he was like the MMA or combat trainer in the Army, which is pretty cool. But unfortunately, he got submitted in 39 seconds into the first round. So Brian Kelleher is no slouch. He's a veteran, and if you try to take him down and give him a was it a guillotine?
It was a guillotine. Yep.
Yeah. So what happened was Ray Rodriguez just tried to take him down, wrestle him, and Brian Kelleher just grabbed his neck, goes down, and instantly chokes him out. I mean, against these veteran UFC, this is like the level difference between like an average MMA fighter and like one that's capable of the UFC. And Ray Rodriguez, based off his record, is no slouch. He's 16-7. So this dude, it's not like he's incapable of doing well. But when you have a guy like Brian Kelleher, who's been in the UFC for a while, has faced top-level competition for a while, he's just able to take advantage of any small mistake, and your chance is gone like that. Ray Rodriguez must be beating himself up right now because like that was his shot to really make an impact.
Yeah, I mean, when you were watching the fight, it was a nice takedown. He had good form. He wrestled him right down. But I guess he just didn't tuck his chin or whatever you have to do to avoid that guillotine because Brian Kelleher had it the moment like they went down.
And it's not uncommon because actually the same thing happened between Dustin Poirier and Khabib. But Khabib was able to get out eventually, but it was really tight. So, I mean, this is not an uncommon thing. And when you're earlier on in the fight, you're not sweaty yet, they can get, the grip is just too there. The people aren't worn out enough. Like, they have too much strength. So when they're squeezing on your neck, like there's nothing, there's no blood, there's no sweat, there's nothing that will make you slide out. So unfortunately for Ray Rodriguez, it was a quick victory for Brian, but it almost seemed like Brian wanted to hop back in later in his own card. Like he's ready to fight next week. I'm excited to see him again.
Opponents. They should have had a second opponent waiting there.
No, yeah, exactly. But congrats to Brian Kelleher. Hopefully we see him again soon. I think he's on a 3-fight win streak, if I remember correctly. Hopefully he's going to break into that top 15 soon.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, he's making great strides as a UFC veteran, so it's good to see him on an upturn.
Yeah. Okay, and then after that we had Andre Muniz versus
Bartosz
Favinsky. Did you have any highlights from this fight?
It looked really competitive early on. Like they traded very well. It went to the ground. I mean, the moment it went to the ground, it looked like Andre Muniz was in complete control. Mm-hmm. I mean, it looked like he seems like he's the next level submission guy. Like similar to a Brian Kelleher. Like his opponent just didn't even seem like he comprehended where like the pressure came from when he got that armbar in finally.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, it's almost like he faked a triangle, and then when Favinsky defended the triangle, he switched to an armbar, and it was almost like he pinned him into it. Like it's almost like he was trapped from the get-go, just trying to do the right thing to prevent a triangle, which is crazy to me, right? Because if you're not that high level of jiu-jitsu, you wouldn't even know that this thing is possible. So I'm actually excited to see Andre continue to fight. And I don't think Bartosz is any slouch at all. I don't think he is. I just think he got outdone by a superior grappler, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Bartosz has a fantastic record still. He's an exciting fighter. I hope to see him again soon. Neither of these fighters took much damage, so hopefully we'll get more performances out of them both. Yeah, Andre Muniz with a very, very clever armbar. It's just, I mean, his opponents in the future are going to have to be hesitant and watch her take him to the ground now.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's 20-4 record now, so that's pretty. Do you know how many fights he has in the UFC?
I'll look it up right now.
Yeah. He's at least one other fight.
Yeah, so he won his Contender Series match in 2019, so about a year ago. He fought Antonio Arroyo on the Blachowicz-Jakar card in also shortly, like right after his Contender Series win, and
Yeah.
then he just won his Bartosz thing.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, I mean,
if I remember correctly, I think they said that he had some jitters, some nerves going to that first fight, so it was a pretty close fight. But there were no nerves in this fight. He just took care of business. Maybe the lack of a crowd helped him. Maybe someone that's not super experienced, maybe not having the crowd actually helps you. It's just more like training. But yeah, it was a great fight for him.
I think you're absolutely right. And yeah, he's a young guy. I think he's 30. He looks really, really strong, really, really seasoned jiu-jitsu. I think we're going to see a lot of good success from him.
He's also pretty jacked. He's got a good physique.
That helps.
Yeah. All right. Well, now on to probably the most exciting fight, depending on how you judge exciting. If you want to see some spinning stuff, some jumping off the walls, doing flips, you got to see Michel Pereira. Regardless of if he's won his past 2 fights, there were some odd things going on. But this fight, it was just so dominant. He was taunting him the whole time. Of course, we got all that spinning crap he does. He's doing flips, bouncing off the walls. But this time, he was actually able to control his energy and move in bursts instead of going all out in the first round, trying to get a KO and then tiring himself out, allowing himself to maybe be wrestled in those later rounds. So it was impressive on that front. And it almost seems like he's going to be one of those stars coming into the top 15 that's just going to start making waves. If he gets a few wins under his belt, I could see him becoming a contender very quickly.
Yeah, he certainly has all the right positive attention, I think. Michel Pereira. I also want to comment, I think, for his wild style of fighting, I think they picked an excellent opponent for him. So Zelim Imandaev is a fantastic fighter, by all means. He hasn't had much success in the UFC for, whatever reason. But yeah, I think a very technical, like closed ability set of a boxer against Michel Pereira allowed him to express a lot of like very interesting, like complex movements that Imandaev's like sort of basic boxing like didn't account for well.
It seemed like Pereira managed the space really well, and Zelim just couldn't get in. Anytime he approached, he was getting a jab to the face, and Michel was kind of walking around the ring, just completely staying out of range until he bursts in. And it also seemed like he was just the superior athlete. It almost it reminded me of a Michael Venom Page when he's facing one of the trash cans, that he constantly jumping in and bouncing out. Except I would argue Michel is probably a little better than Michael Venom Page is. If you haven't watched the fight, though, I highly recommend it. He puts his hand behind his back. He faces his opponent sideways and looks straight ahead, so he's not even looking at his opponent.
He does some dances.
He's just tooling with his opponent. And the best moment of the fight, he slapped his opponent because in the weigh-ins, Zelim actually slapped him. So he got him back. He pointed to his hand and whips it across his face about 5 seconds later. It was Nick Diaz-esque.
Yeah, I liked his. I think he found a better balance of like Showtime, exciting moves and like proper technique with like good, strong, hard, long hits. Like he was really damaging Zelim Imandaev. So this fight came down to a kind of controversial finish in a little bit. So if he finished with I can't even remember
suplex.
How he got to his back. Yeah, it was a suplex. I think it was after like a jumping maneuver or something like that.
Yeah, but to be able to get a suplex, to have the energy to do that in the third round when you're such an explosive fighter that's known for his early round stuff, that also impressed me. It seemed kind of out of nowhere, but the fact that he could flip someone over his back and then jump onto his back immediately, I was very impressed by him.
Yeah, certainly. He did a very athletic suplex. He got on his opponent's back and did a probably pretty strong choke.
Yeah.
Did you see the tap? Because I personally didn't see him tap, but I'm okay with the finish just because like the way the fight was going, it was going that way regardless.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. There's no way he tapped, but from the ref's point of view, he tried to grab the hand, and I could see why the ref thought he might be tapping. And as a ref, you don't want to have someone choked out for too long. I completely get it. It was a bad stoppage, but the decision, it would have been the same regardless. The only difference is Zelim now has a finish on his record instead of a decision, which I don't know how much that's going to help you. I don't really think it matters that much. The fight was basically over. There was 20 seconds left in the fight, and he had him in a rear naked choke. What are you going to do? You've been beat up the whole fight. You have no energy. The dude's bloody all over. Michel looks fine. He looks pretty fresh. So he just didn't. The fight was over, like you said.
That ending made me sort of think that Michel Pereira could have ended this fight at any moment that he wanted with like that
A
approaching suplex,
suplex
doesn't it? Yeah.
into a rear naked choke.
He chose to do it at the very, very last second. It's kind of like, to me, like a show of dominance. Like, I'm going to take you down and beat you here too, right before the end, you know?
The whole fight was a show of dominance. I mean,
Right.
but it was like beyond what something Conor McGregor would do. Conor McGregor would respect his opponents more. Sometimes he would put his hands behind his back, but he wouldn't be dancing around the ring like this dude is. He wouldn't be throwing a. He actually threw a Showtime kick, and he also did a Superman punch off the wall. Like, what's that kick where you jump and like the heel of your foot comes up and around and whacks the guy? He hit one of those.
Yeah, he tried to do like I can't even remember, like a cartwheel kick or no, a cartwheel kicks from the side. Like
It's
a
Rolling
buzzsaw
Thunder
kick?
or something like that.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, so
It doesn't even have like a traditional name because like you don't practice that, you know?
yeah, and the best.
You don't go to,
Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, like, you don't go to like, American Top Team somewhere and they're like, all right, we're doing buzzsaw kicks today. Everyone get your flips on, you know?
You know what's so funny? Diego Sanchez did that same kick to him the first second of the last fight. And for those who don't remember, he beat the crap out of Diego Sanchez till like a minute and a half left, and then he illegally kneed him in the head, Diego Sanchez in the head, and Diego Sanchez took the win there. So that was a loss, but like, was it a loss? It was one of those where it's like a John Jones loss with the 12-6 elbow. It's like, yeah, you got the loss, but should it really be there? And if it weren't there, Michelle's in the top 15, or at least facing a top 15 opponent. But with a guy like him, it doesn't even really matter. He's so entertaining to watch. I don't care if he has a number next to his name. I don't think many of the fans care. As the average Joe MMA people, we're speaking for the average Joes out there, he's one of the most exciting people to watch. So, and especially for the fact that he was training with cows and horses leading up to this. Apparently he was wrestling cows or something. Maybe that's the new meta. Maybe we're going to have a bunch of fighters go, man, I should be training with farm animals.
He competed to the weird bear thing when he was a kid.
Yeah, like let's get some of the Australian fighters fighting kangaroos, just boxing them.
Volkanovski out there just taking out kangaroos.
He could, though. He totally could. He would just annihilate them.
Oh, I just do single legs. Just shoot on a kangaroo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like just finishing comment on Michel Pereira, I think everyone who watches him fight is like wants to watch him fight again. I think he makes instant fans like that. Yeah. So I think once he starts, like if he like does a main event, if he like just headlines a card, like once that happens, he's gonna have so many like return fans just willing to come back and watch him. I think he's like I think he's a very exciting like monetary prospect for the UFC potentially.
And he's only 26, dude. He's only 26. That's crazy.
He's a freak athlete.
He's a freak athlete. Like he's in my head, he's gonna be like a young UL. That's just how I see him. He's not the wrestler, but besides that, he's very explosive, and he has to space out his burst. He can't just constantly go. He's not gonna wear people down by constant pressure. He's gonna just burst at any second, and he could knock you out. He threw multiple flying knees, like I said, all that crazy stuff. So one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC right now. Definitely check him out. The next card he's on. We'll mention it, of course, if you want to stay up to date. Keep watching us. We'll let you know when he's fighting next. But then we go to the co-main event, and this was a really impressive fight by OSP. It was Ovince St. Preux versus Alonzo Menifield. Alonzo Menifield, actually, both these guys were football players. Alonzo Menifield just looks like an absolute tank. OSP is taller, but if you look at their bodies, Alonzo is just – it looks like a 5% body fat, 205 pounds, absolutely jacked. He does look like a football player, but he just wasn't able to get in on OSP. OSP was able to keep the range, and he was able to finish it with the KO as Alonzo tried to I believe it looked like OSP slipped. I think Alonzo took that as, oh, he's actually damaged. I'm going to try to maybe finish it. And then he got a counter hook and just took him out.
The counter hook, it's one of those weird punches that doesn't even look like it hit that hard, but it just perfectly connected just hard enough to put him to sleep like that.
Yeah, and Alonzo, I think Alonzo is moving towards him. So anytime you get a punch where you're moving into the punch, it's just doubly effective. And if you don't brace for it, if you don't see it coming, those are the shots that knock you out. And I think he didn't really see it coming.
Right. But yeah, like even aside from like the final knockout, I think OSP, as you said, maintained range and dominated like the majority of that fight. Alonzo did like approach and get some shots like when you charge and blitz in. but for the most part, OSP managed to keep his distance and do a lot of damage from like the outside. A lot of body kicks, a lot of leg kicks, a lot of like good like systematic like wearing someone down throughout the fight. I was very impressed by OSP.
Yeah, and coming off the go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, I feel like that's what you have to do against someone who's as like, I guess like physically dominant looking as Alonzo Metafields. You have to attack the body.
Yeah.
You have to like, you have to wear him down and not let him use his like, physical gifts against
Yeah, absolutely. And I personally thought OSP was going to try to take it to the ground at some point, but he was very comfortable on the feet. He did give the tribute to the Black Panther dude that died. He was rocking one of those.
Yeah, Chadwick Boseman, I believe.
Yeah. So I mean that's kind of cool. It was a necessary win for him though. Like he used to be a number one contender. He's been on a little bit of a slide the past few years. He moved up to heavyweight and lost, but he did that on short notice. So it's not like we really had time to beef up that much. We saw him at 205. He looks like a 205er in my opinion. It doesn't really seem like heavyweight would be ideal for him. But he looked as good as he ever looked. I was very excited to see that because OSP has had some very exciting fights in the past. He's got that Von Flue choke still in the back pocket. So hopefully he can get up a win streak. I know the Ben Rothwell loss, I personally thought it might get into his head, but it didn't. It seemed like he wasn't flustered at all.
I agree with you that it was a very critical victory for OSP. I think he showed what he needed to do, but hopefully he got some confidence going, like beating the young, very like good looking prospect. I wonder. I don't know what the rankings are. Is OSP ranked anymore?
No.
Yeah, so I can't even think of an opponent for him at this point. But I imagine they would. I'd like to see him against maybe a grappler type. I want to see his submission game get put to the. I feel like that's where he excelled a lot of his career. I want to see how that compares to the modern prospects that are like up and coming grapplers and stuff.
What about like an Anthony Smith?
I don't. That seems like a loss for both of them. I don't know.
What do you mean?
Like Anthony Smith is going from facing being the number 5 to facing like unranked opponents at this point.
Yeah, but unranked, but he was a former number 1 contender. It's not like this guy's any slouch. For me, it seems like if OSP wants to make his statement and wants to get back in the top whatever, he's got to get a win over one of those guys. And Anthony Smith kind of has to prove himself again. Like if you hear him speak, he just sounds so demoralized. I don't think he wants another. Not that he wants. I don't think he's going to get another top tier fight. Like I don't know who would Anthony Smith face in the top. I don't know, top 10.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. I don't think OSP is a good matchup for him. He tends to struggle against guys that are physically bigger than him, and I think OSP is certainly physically bigger than Anthony Smith. Mm-hmm. So I think he might he might even try to bounce weight classes again. Who knows? Like he's not having much success here at light heavyweight, where particularly against like the larger opponents, like we've been saying.
Yeah, what about
I think Anthony Smith came into the light heavyweight division at a very, very opportune time where John Jones just cleared everyone out. Like a lot of his opponents, even went to Bellator because they didn't want to continue waiting to fight John and stuff. So I think he got a shot in a very opportune moment and good for him. But since coming to the light heavyweight division, he hasn't really had much success.
And what about they might put him against a Johnny Walker who's ranked number 11. That maybe seems like a more plausible fight for Anthony Smith. But again, I don't think he wins that.
I don't think he wins it, but I like that fight.
Yeah, me too.
Because it'll probably be standing. Anthony Smith won't have to worry about being taken down where he tends to struggle. So we'll probably see some interesting trades. Honestly, if he has anything left, I worry that these fights are becoming so one-sided that he's just taking so much damage throughout them,
And he's had so many fights in his career. It's just your body can only take it for so long, unless you're that Olenek dude who's 80 fights and he's in heavyweight and he just strangles you to death. The old man strength.
He doesn't really speak English that well, so we don't know. Maybe he sounds really stupid and slow in Russian from all the damage.
That's funny. All right, well, now we're gonna hop into the main event, which was, of course, Alistair Overeem versus Augustus Sakai. Incredibly impressive performance by Alistair Overeem, in my opinion. Apart from the fact that he would often cover up and not even attempt to throw any kind of counters. When he was being attacked by Sakai, it was all about weathering the storm. Maybe that was part of the strategy just to wear him out over time, because Sakai kind of beats you down, it's like a death by a million cuts. So Augusto Sakai is going to try to beat you down over time. He would just cover up. But in the later rounds, Sakai just had no energy. He's obviously not used to having 5-round fights. And heavyweights, I think 5-round fights are like something you really need to experience yourself. Look at Francis Ngannou. By the 5th round of the fight with Stipe, he could barely like walk. He could barely move his feet, and when he was just taken down instantly. So Augusto Sakai, it was unfortunate. He got beaten down in the end. A couple sharp elbows to the face on the mat, like, oh, those gotta hurt. But he did get some experience in the later rounds. Alistair Overeem, he's an incredibly dynamic fighter. The fact that he was able to transfer from the Overeem, where he's just brawling people, to what he is today, he's an insane grappler. He is incredible control on the ground. He has the cardio for days. If he's able to withstand you early, he could become a contender again, which is amazing.
I completely agree. I think Alistair Overeem showed a lot of like really, really, really impressive stuff this fight against Augusto Sakai. I think his physique looked proper. He didn't look too swollen or too small. He looked like just the right size for him. He moved around well. I completely agree with you though about that weird high guard. I can't really like understand or tell why he did it. Maybe Augusto's shots like weren't damaging him much, but he did get cut open from some like elbows that came in through that guard. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to see him like if he's gonna cover up like that, at least do some head movement, you know, like try to get out of the way. Don't just post up against the fence. Simply because like if I'm a referee, that looks really bad. That looks like you're compromised. Mm-hmm. So I worried that the fight would stop early a couple of times because he was doing that kind of stuff. Because it's hard to tell, like, are you hurt or not? Because you're not like, you know, showing anything or moving around much.
I worry that he faces another power puncher, and they just punch through the guard. Like, and Ngannou, that guard is not going to stop Ngannou from making you like fall on the ground. So you know, against Augusto Sakai is not really that super power puncher. He's a great fighter, but he's not a power puncher. So in the top 5, I don't think that's going to work as well. But the rest of his game, super well rounded, very impressed. Alistair actually mentioned this, and I kind of agree. He said he destroyed Rosenstruck. And he basically did, up until the last 3 seconds of the fight, and it was a debatable stoppage. The ref, I mean, maybe he didn't have to stop it. Maybe he was okay. But otherwise, he would be on like a 4 or 5 fight win streak, right? Like Alistair Overeem's actually on a tear right now. This late in his career. He's 47-18. Talk about a long freaking career. This guy has been fighting forever. He can still speak properly. He still sounds coherent. And I hope he continues to move up the division. I like seeing the veterans make a comeback. It shows to me that like age does matter, but experience also matters. And if you're able to leverage that experience, you could still make some damage in the top echelons of the divisions.
Completely agree. I mean, in regards to that Rosenstruck fight, I think we commented on it before. I mean, I think he won that fight as well. I think that, I mean, like look at his big losses against Francis, and you're like, who didn't lose to Francis besides Stipe from that shot, right? Like I feel like he certainly does belong up there at the top, and I think he proved that. I think Augusto Sakai, it looked like he had no business being in there with Alistair Overeem. Like even though he the first 2 rounds looked very like dominant with it, like at a certain point when Alistair took over, it got bad. I mean, they took him down with the exact same takedown both rounds in a row, kept him down the rest of the round once he got it. Alistair Overeem. So something I want to comment on that I saw is his very sophisticated ground and pound. It wasn't like a clumsy wrestler throwing elbows blindly. You know, it's like a seasoned striker positioning, doing like very powerful like post elbows where you push against the opponent's head and drop back into it. It was a very sophisticated ground and pound. And I don't think Augusto Sakai had like any answer for that kind of damage and that kind of like.
He would rotate in like 3 or 4 different kinds of shots. You can't defend everything. So yeah, like you said, very, very technical. Augusto Sakai had no answer for it. The one point I'm going to disagree on you on is I think Sakai had a place with Overeem. I just think it was an experience thing. He's never gone, like he's never had a 5-round fight before. I don't think he knew how to pace himself as well. He did kind of blow his load early. Like he went all out and it looked like he was dominating the fight from there. Maybe he lands a lucky punch and gets that KO victory. I hope over time with that experience, he'll only get better. I personally thought he did really well. It seems like he's a pretty good kickboxer. Very, very fast for a big dude. So I was pretty impressed by him. I just think Overeem was just too dominant. And I think the experience won him that fight.
I guess I can agree with those points. Sakai, there was something I was going to bring up about him. So Sakai showed a lot of good stuff with his boxing, very good movement. I think his physique could stand to be improved a little bit. I think anyone, like, once you're trying to be an elite athlete, elite fighter, you're not going to get there looking like that. Like, as judgmental as that sounds, like, that's just not the modern UFC anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't even had a heavyweight champion that's been like tipping the top of the scale since like Brock Lesnar, really, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be like an excellent fighter, and I think part of being an excellent fighter is being excellently conditioned for those fights.
Yeah, so if he drops like 10, 15 pounds, maybe he lasts longer. Maybe he doesn't burn out as quick.
Maybe he speeds up even more, which would be like, like even more of like a blade he can use against his opponents. Yeah. I remember what I was going to ask. So then again, so if this was a 3-round fight, like if it went exactly how it went, if it was a 3-round fight, I think Augusto Sakai would have won that just by the judges. Maybe a tie with like a 10-8 at the end. I don't know. But if this was like a regular 3-round fight where Augusto Sakai didn't have to pace into the 5 rounds, how do you think it would have played out? Do you think Alistair would have brought in a different strategy? Like, would he have used the high guard like into the 2nd round? How would that have gone?
I just wonder if Overeem is a slower starter. Because I think Sakai does do better, but I also feel like part of Overeem's plan was to tire him out. Because Overeem's been in those 5-round fights so many times. He just knows. Like I said, he just has the experience. So, I think it is a different fight, but I would also say Overeem's game plan would be different. So it's very hard for me to actually like judge,
So I hope Alistair gets another fight with Rosenstrike going forward in his career. I think that's like the logical next step. Rosenstrike lost to Francis just like Alistair did, just like everyone else did. In fact, Alistair was technically more competitive against Francis than Rosenstrike was.
I mean, not technically, definitely. Rosenstrike got backed up and KO'd in 20 seconds. So
yeah, I think Alistair against Rosenstrike. Who did Rosenstrike beat recently that we watched? I can't remember. I think he beat like an older fella.
Junior Dos Santos.
So yeah, Rosenstrike beat Junior Dos Santos. So Rosenstrike beat the old guard. The Alistair Overeem beat the up and coming Lion. They're both coming off of losses against Francis. I think it's just like logically the perfect fight to make.
That could make sense. I heard Alistair Overeem. I don't think he actually wants to fight him. That's where that "I destroyed him" comment came from. It seemed like he didn't want the rematch. What I heard is he maybe wanted Derek Lewis. The division's very. It's kind of cut off at the top. Like to get a championship fight, there's a wait list at the moment. So Derek Lewis probably should be like in the top, should be a contender for the title. But given the fact that we have Ngannou, given the fact that John Jones is coming to heavyweight, it just seems like he's kind of stuck in limbo. Him, Curtis Blades, those guys. Yeah, I could definitely see that fight happening, or I could see the Derek Lewis fight happening. So we'll see.
So does Derek Lewis have a fight lined up? Is he going against Curtis Blades?
Yeah, I think he is against Curtis Blades. Yeah.
So yeah, I think. I don't know. I do want to see Alistair against Derek Lewis. I think that's a very interesting matchup. Like they're both very good strikers in their own like unique ways now, and it would be interesting to see how that clashes.
Yeah, me too. Okay,
maybe Alistair takes him down, gives him some of those elbows.
Yeah, those elbows, like for those who didn't see it,
bouncing off the mat. It was bad.
They were atrocious. What he would do is, you said it before, he would pin them with his hand and then use the leverage of his body to just fall into an elbow. And with that, it's all of your body weight into an elbow. And this dude's a heavyweight. It's 240 plus pounds. So anytime you get hit by that, there's a very high chance you're getting KO'd, and Sakai just crumbled.
Yeah, I think I counted. I think Alistair landed like 7 or 8 of those elbows. And from 7 or 8 of those, Augusto Sakai's face was just torn apart.
Yeah. And now coming back, we got to see how Sakai responds. Does he lose his mentality a little bit because he just got smashed?
I think this is the best thing that could have happened to him. He lost in a very resounding way against like a very esteemed, very experienced opponent. I think as a young up-and-comer, that's an amazing like new benchmark for you to strive to reach. Yeah, like he needs to now become the Augusto Sakai that could have beaten Alistair Overeem. And I think that's a very interesting contender.
Hmm. I wonder. Let me see how old he is.
He's pretty young.
29. Yeah, he's a young dude. He's got time to grow. In the heavyweight division, 29 is just a baby, right? If
Right.
you're
It's
if
very
you're
like late
30, like
age.
that's nothing. It's really the 35 plus year olds that are dominating the division. So, okay, well, with that, I that was our recap of the UFC fight night Overeem. Now I actually wanted to talk a little bit about the Adesanya Costa fight coming up. I've been watching a ton of film on this. Out of the gate, though, do you have any first predictions on this fight? Sure, it can evolve over time, but just out of the gate, what do you think would happen in this fight? I believe it's September 26th.
So out of the gate, from just all the material I've been like seeing coming up to this and looking at the body of work of the two guys we're seeing, I think it's going to be a battle of range. Is who can control the distance they want to fight at. I think I think if Adesanya if Adesanya can keep it a distance, I think he's going to just piece him apart. Managed to show that he could do that against power punchers of all calibers. So I think
Mm-hmm.
he has a very good shot against that. But I think Costa's biggest advantage, I would think, is to try to push him up against the cage and do like a clinch war.
Mm.
Where he's much stronger, where he's much bigger, we can like assert his dominance. If he keeps like Israel pinned against the cage for a whole round, I mean that's like that warrants a 10-8, right?
Yeah,
So
it
I
does.
think
But watching his fights, he doesn't clinch and he doesn't wrestle. All he does is back you up and then just bangs. That's his strategy. And the big, so just out originally, I thought in my head, I was like, oh, Costa, he's just so powerful. He's going to be able to withstand Adesanya's shots. And because of that, he's going to be able to get in, probably get a KO or something. But after watching a lot of his fights, even against Yoel, he eats counter punches and jabs like no other. He has no regard for them. It doesn't seem like he banks on the fact that his chin's going to hold up. I don't know that if that works against Adesanya, because I think what's going to happen is Adesanya is just going to stay at range, like you said, control the distance, and just jab him. Even against Yoel, Costa was just getting jabbed constantly, and he had no answer for it. He just kept walking straight. I have no doubt the dude's incredibly tough, but I don't think he's going to be able to get in at some point. He's probably going to be able to hit Costa Adesanya. He is a puncher's chance, but beyond that, technically, I think Adesanya is going to take it.
I think I think it would make more. I think it would be much more. I would lean much more towards Israel, but the sheer difference of bodies that these two gentlemen have, and I mean, let's be real. Costa's been like joking about it. He's like, USADA couldn't come tested because of COVID.
Wait, really?
Like, yeah, apparently he didn't get tested once while he was in Brazil.
Oh my god!
So I think there's a very high chance, he's been, if not at this point in his career, at some point in his career, he did some things to get his body into that,
Well, I think he
that
was a
physique.
bodybuilder, and if you're in Brazil and you're a bodybuilder, you're taking steroids. Like
Right,
that's
right.
just
I
what
mean,
it is, and that changes your body forever. Like the muscle memory of just having inflated. It's not going to be as big as it would be if you're on the juice at the moment, but you permanently gain a little bit of muscle mass. So
yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, it's weird because you could tell that he cycles his weight up and down. I think he's much smarter than he lets on. I think
Oh yeah.
his weight cutting technique is probably like, I don't want to say if it's the most sophisticated or not in the UFC, but it's got to be one of the most efficient ones. So you see him, he lets himself get fat because he looked like he had that big fat head when you see him in those like fancy shirts at like UFC like events. And then he'd get a little fat, then he'd shrink down to like whatever really low body fat he's going to fight at. And then once you're at that low body fat, all your weight is muscle pretty much. You can drain water out of muscle. So that's what allows him to. So he probably cuts down to maybe 230, 225, and then he just squeezes the rest of that out of him.
I don't think he's cutting 40 pounds of water weight, but I do think
I think he might be.
You really? I don't think that's possible. Maybe, but I know he was under 220. I saw a video like last week or something. He said finally broke like the 220 mark. So if I had to
Okay, I saw
guess,
that, but yeah,
he's
so if
probably
he's
around like
220,
210, 205 if I had to guess. But the thing is, he's like full six pack, super definition. He had that at like 230. So to be able to even cut down to 185 is just crazy to me. So do you think he could just muscle his way into Adesanya?
yeah, I honestly I think he's much heavier than that. I think he has to be in the 220s. I think he's so big. Because like look at Yoel. Yoel's like a giant guy too, and Yoel like hurts himself really badly to make that weight. I think Adesanya does the same thing, but he's younger and his body can take it a lot better. Again, the
But
steroids
Adesanya
obviously
doesn't.
probably
Adesanya
not
walks
not my bad,
around.
my bad. I get their name. I
Costa.
get their names confused. I meant Costa.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, yeah. I think Costa, if he does have the use of substances to help, I think that would absolutely help get his like body fat percentage on the right side of the ratio and just allow his body to tolerate those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that if Israel can produce enough damage to take down like over the course of the fight, I think as it goes on, Costa's chances of winning get lower and lower.
I agree.
Just from like shots and exhaustion. Man, I think early on it's going to be a few like the first and second round are going to be tense for Israel.
Also, we've never. I don't believe we've seen Costa in a 5-round fight. So it didn't seem like he really gassed out against UL. It seemed like they were both at the same pace by the end. But Adesanya has experience in this area. Maybe Costa just goes out there and wings it in the first round or first few rounds. By the fourth round, he's just done. Like you said, Adesanya is going to pick him apart by then. So, yeah, I would still give the edge to Adesanya. I know Costa's a giant. I know he's beefy, but technically he eats too many counters and eats too many jabs, and he's actually gotten dropped by them. He gets dropped by these punches, but his chin has always held up to this point. I don't think Adesanya is going to KO him, but I think he's going to slow him down enough where he's just not very effective, and he's going to be able to pick him apart.
Right. I think that's what it's going to come down to as well. Probably. It's still in my head. It's still a toss up though.
Yeah, me too. But it's going to be regardless. It's going to be an amazing fight. Like we all thought the UL Adesanya fight was going to be good, but now we have Adesanya having something to prove. Everyone thinks he's a boring fighter now because of recency bias. Even though you look at his history of work, and obviously he's not. He's a pretty exciting fighter. And then you got Costa who says, "I'm going to make him cry in the ring." He's just a Brazilian badass. So, and Costa's going to bring the fight to him. There's just no chance that he just sits back like Yoel did. Yoel actually had this. What's interesting is Yoel had the same strategy against Costa as he did Adesanya, except Costa went forward. So it was only like a microcosm of what's going to be coming in that next fight. And that's kind of what worried me. I saw Yoel dropped him multiple times. He got dropped, but he dropped him multiple times, and they were about the same height. And Adesanya is way bigger than he is, taller. So, yeah, we'll see.
I really want to see Paulo Costa throw kicks. I think he throws thunderous kicks after he turned like Yoel's face into a ghost.
Yeah. So as far as I can tell, his strategy is walk up, kick, punch, kick, punch. He's the guy that I've heard in the training room 6 hours a day. He works harder than everyone else, and because of that, he thinks he can outwork people in the ring, which he definitely can. Adesanya, he's a pretty skinny dude. If you land a lot of body shots, for instance, maybe he just crumbles. We haven't seen someone besides maybe was it Alexander Gustafsson? What's his name again?
Talking about what?
There was a 5-rounder with Adesanya.
Oh, there's Kelvin Gastelum.
Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum. Okay. He was the only person that I've seen was able to really get it on the inside as a puncher. So, but then Kelvin Gastelum was much more dynamic in his approaches. Costa's just going to straight up walk into him. He's not really going to have much head movement. He doesn't really use any head movement at all. He's just relying on the fact that he's bigger and stronger.
Man, it's like such an interesting battle between like the dynamic, like, super like technical striker against the guy who knows, like you said, 2 punches and a kick, and he's like made a career out of it.
Yeah, but Adesanya said it before, and I agree. He doesn't swing in like hope. He aims and fires, which is very true. Because if you look at the Whitaker fight, that's exactly what he did. Whitaker got on the inside. He was able to hit him right on the chin. You can argue Whitaker's chin just wasn't there because of those Yoel battles. I agree. But Costa's also had battles. Look at the Costa-Yoel battle. Like, that was crazy. Yeah. But the one thing I would say is that was over a year ago. So he has had time to recover. Costa's very eager to get into there. He actually faked a doctor's note because he'd gotten like a bicep surgery. He got a fake doctor to try to get something approved to get the fight with Adesanya originally instead of Yoel.
Dude, Brazil's amazing.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised they got caught. But if they're willing to do that, the steroid thing, I wouldn't put it past them. But hopefully they're tested at least once before the fight. It makes no sense to me if they're just not tested,
Yeah. I think procedure-wise, they test before and after the fight. Yeah, but I think like still, what 6 months? Like 6 months of like unrestricted, do what you want and get it out of your system by then. I don't want to accuse him of cheating, but man, he's making a lot of jokes. He's alluding to a lot of stuff. Have you
Yeah.
seen what he posted on Joe Rogan's thing?
No.
Somebody posted like a picture of Joe Rogan looking like jacked or whatever when he was young. And then Paulo Costa posted, "Joe's on steroids. I would know," something like that.
Here's the thing. His English isn't the best, but that doesn't mean he's stupid. Like if
No,
I
it's
try to speak
hilarious.
if I try to speak Brazilian after only learning it for a little while, I'm not going to be great at it. So you can't judge his intelligence. And it seems like his marketing is really, really good. He understands how people respond to things. He's a jokester. He's a troll. He's an online troll. Just posted a video. He had a sparring partner he's using that basically looks like Adesanya, a tall, skinny
He
guy.
chased him around the
It's just
cage.
him chasing him around the ring, which is amazing. Like, I actually think it's partly their manager because Henry Cejudo has the same manager, and they all seem to do wacky stuff to brand themselves, but it works really well.
Yeah, man. Even beyond this fight, I hope to see more of Paulo Acosta. Paulo Acosta.
They're both undefeated. You know, it's like someone's not going to be undefeated after this, which is crazy
Right.
because these two guys have been so dominant up to this point.
Yeah, they have no issue at all. Like getting, I think Paulo Acosta had an easier road to the championship match than Israel had potentially.
Mhm.
I know Paulo had to go through Yoel, but a lot of people went through Yoel. Yoel fought a lot of people in that division.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I really had to go over in this. Do you have any last comments that you'd like to get out there?
No, nothing this time. Exciting fights coming up as always.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, there are fights this weekend. The card there aren't very many well-known people on the card. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem
The main event was dropped.
the main
Glover
event.
Teixeira was supposed to be the main event here, and he got COVID.
Oh, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
Michelle
Yeah.
Waters and Angela Hill got upgraded to the main event.
There's always a chance that a good fight could happen, and we'll be on the lookout. If there's any great fight, we'll be sure to recap it next week. But for now, the goal is next week we'll be pretty much previewing the Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington fight. And, of course, we'll talk more Adesanya Costa. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it, as always. For MMA content, you always got it here at Average Joe's MMA. Please email backofthemob@gmail.com if you have any comments or questions. We'll be happy to talk about them on the show. We'd love to discuss with you guys. We really want to get our community engaged because we love the support so far. We want to keep it going. So, again, thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great day.
Bye, everyone.